Rewind.
Thank you for listening to Remake Rewind. This is episode 3. I am Mike, and with me as always is Xavier. How are you doing, Xavier?
I'm doing really great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And then we've got Dustin, and he's got a special guest that I'm going to let him introduce. How are you doing, Dustin?
I am doing amazing. This is Dustin coming to you from San Francisco. I am here with a very special guest, one of my very best friends, and a very funny local comedian, Miss Jennifer Dronsky.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen.
How are you doing, Jen?
Pretty great.
All right. Well, I'm glad to have you. I think this is a very appropriate episode to have. We're doing Beauty and the Beast. Of course, we're going to be talking about the 1991 classic Disney animated film. And the new one starring Emma Watson, Luke Evans, Ewan McGregor. Who else is in it? Kevin Kline. Bunch of actors.
Josh
a lot of
Gad, Hattie
Josh
Moorhan,
Gad.
Hayden Gwynn, Gerard Horan. I'm just reading off IMDb at this point. You know, whatever.
We got the two.
Just too many
Two
to
cheese.
really even begin to list.
Yeah, a lot of people. So I think what we'll do this time around is let's just go over our general impressions of the classic, how we remember it, how it made us feel, just the stuff we remembered, and then we can nitpick that movie, and then we'll move into the second one. So,
Well, wait. What we got to do though is define what's our criteria, right? What are we evaluating?
I think
these
this
on?
one's a little harder to do that because the new one is almost a shot-for-shot remake. Of course, they extended some stuff. I would say we would obviously talk about the musical number, the creature design, not the creature design, but the actual.
I think the creature design absolutely. These are two very different beasts.
There's a lot that could be said about just the general production design of the entire movie.
I had some feelings about not only the beast design, but the way all the furniture or just looking at all of the character designs, the beast, Lumiere, Cogsworth, all of them kind of at least to me, read a little bit differently in both movies.
Yeah, they
of
did.
course.
So I guess we can talk about the character design. We'll talk about the overall world, and then I guess I would just say the differences. So, like I said earlier, they really are almost a shot-for-shot remake, with the differences being the extended musical numbers and a few added music numbers in the new one. So let's just talk about the overall world, the character design. Then we'll pick apart the movie like we always do, and then we'll segue into the second movie. How does that sound?
All right, sounds great.
Absolutely. I'm going to try my best. It's my first night. We got this.
It's all good. So, let's start with general impressions first. So, going to that movie, the original one, the 1991, came out when I was 2 going on 3. I was born in 88, came out in 91. So, I watched this movie a lot growing up.
Way to brag.
I have 2 younger sisters and a younger brother, so I definitely watched this a lot. So I was able to, almost word for word, recite this movie as I was watching it a couple days ago. And
so that's totally different. So I had seen this movie once in theaters, most likely with my mother and younger brother. So it was a very different experience, rewatching this movie, as a 35-year-old man. And honestly, I liked it way more.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just being older and, more comfortable, watching a kind of girly movie. But, I enjoyed this immensely. I fucking cried at a point in this movie. It's a very good movie.
Won multiple Academy Awards for the music. It was nominated for Best Picture, so that makes sense as an adult that you would like it. This was before the era of having separate nominees for animated films, so it was a big deal for its time.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was swept up, captivated, just judging it as a movie through the lens of a 2017 movie watcher. I was, I guess I was just kind of struck by when Bella's running through the town and stuff, and everyone's oh, she's so peculiar and all this, because she reads, because she's smart and beautiful, that's not a kind of woman that can exist, all of that stuff was I just got swept up in it, right? And I mean, I don't know, even when you get to just the design of the beast in the movie, he's really scary and his temper is flaring up all the time, but you get sucked into this world, which is it's a fairy tale, man. It brings you in there.
What about you, Xavier? You were homeschooled. You got to watch this, right?
So that's an interesting thing for me because I watched a lot of things like Aladdin, but I only ever saw Beauty and the Beast like twice before this last week. And I watched the original, or at least the original Disney Beauty and the Beast, actually earlier today. I just like as a refresher because I'm familiar with it. I've seen lots of chunks of it over the years, but last time I had seen it before this week was, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. And I gotta say, like, coming from sort of an artist perspective, there are a lot of things they did really, really well. And there were a lot of things that were, I don't know, just that kind of hurt. A little perspective on like where this movie is in the, I don't know, the animation universe. It was like right towards the beginning of the Disney Renaissance, right? You know, they had all those movies. They had like The Great Mouse Detective. They had The Little Mermaid. They had The Lion King and stuff. And like it was kind of at the beginning of that. Watching it earlier today, I guess, it struck me that the animation quality and like the visuals of everything that I was seeing were just a little bit weirdly off.
Dude, I agree completely. I was watching this with my wife, and we were talking about, like, there are Miyazaki movies from the same time which are much better animated. Like, just the quality of animation and, like, the amount of things that are moving on screen and moving fluidly, it is a little bit disappointing. Like, I agree completely. Like, for a major Disney feature, some of the animation is a little shoddy. I would agree.
Well, they also did this was one of the first movies that they did where they changed their animation style. So before this, everything was like 100% hand-drawn for Disney. This was one of the first ones where they did the things where they had pre-rendered backgrounds.
That wasn't what took me out of it. Like, a lot of it was just like the facial expressions, or like,
yeah, I definitely agree.
Like the ballroom dancing scene, you know, obviously there's some CG happening in there, and it's you know, it's impressive at the time. It's the smaller thing, like the expressions of the horse's face really stuck out to me. The way like Belle's eyes and eyebrows and lips move when she's speaking or saying things, like, it definitely seemed like a little bit off, dude. Like, it could have been better. Story-wise, the main thing that jumped out at me rewatching this movie at 35 was when in the intro, they show you that the old hag woman that knocks on the door and presents the rose, you know, and she's like ultimately cast out by the prince because he's supposed to be some asshole. And then curses him, and he has until his 21st birthday to fall in love or convince a woman to love him. And then they reveal in the movie that was 10 years ago. Like, that means that she cursed an 11-year-old child for not letting a stranger into the house, which is insane. Like, that's just, and then also like giving anyone until their 21st birthday. Like, I mean, I was 21, dude. Like, I didn't know how to love anybody.
Well,
like,
back then,
anybody at 21 is an asshole. Like,
this is what,
you're
the
21 years old.
though. So 21 is like 40 back then.
Okay, fair enough. The other point is, if I was 11 and I were transformed into the Beast in this movie, I would have been pumped.
Yeah, super.
I would have been a huge monster that was unstoppable. Like, an 11-year-old's dream is to be Beast in this movie.
I went into like, I love the movie. I had that nostalgia bug as I was watching it. The thing that I did while watching this movie, knowing that we're going to do this podcast and end up ultimately picking it apart and finding the things that don't make sense, is I was trying to find everything that didn't make sense in the movie. And when we get into the new one, it actually answered a lot of my questions. But one of the things that bugged me, they kept saying he was the prince, right? So he's 11 years old as a prince. Presumably, he has his parents somewhere. What happened to them?
No. They're just absent. They're not present.
That's what I'm saying.
They have nothing to do with this.
If his parents were dead, he would be the king. I don't know anything about French royalty, but that's my
Also, dude, if his parents had been alive, they would have taught him not to let strangers into their house in the middle of the night.
Yeah, how does like a random person get to the castle with royalty? So yeah, that is a little strange. So,
And then the Enchantress's curse is just sadistic, dude. It's like, okay, cool. Not only you will become a beast, but everyone that lives here will become an inanimate object. And also, well, I guess in the newer movie they explain that we're also going to erase the memories of everyone that lives adjacent to this castle so that they'll forget that there was ever a castle here.
Yeah.
Like, it is an extreme punishment.
Yeah.
Well, I think that fits in really well with the tradition of fairy tale storytelling over however long. I mean, most of the punishments that you see in fairy tales are super fucking extreme, dude. I mean,
no, they are, but they don't have this much collateral damage. Like, the people that just lived there did nothing. Like, they did not deserve this at all. There might have been, like, the Lumiere dude might have been like, no, we should probably let this old hag in because, like, it's hella rainy and like, she's gonna die. Like, it just is this extreme punishment to a child for not letting a stranger into a house. Like,
I gotta say that I believe that there is some ulterior motive. Like, maybe that lady is coming back to, like, serve punishment, like, ahead of, like, she already wanted to be mean.
When we get into the 2017 one, I have a lot to say about, her name was Agatha. They gave the hag, the witch, a name. I've got a lot about to say about her when we get into it. The thing that didn't make sense is, so we already kind of touched on it. He was 11 years old, right? At the end of the movie, when the spell's broken, he magically becomes human again, and he is an adult, like a 20-something-year-old man.
He has aged throughout the years.
What about
the
Chip?
10 years.
Chip was a child in this cup, so he transforms into a person 4, 5, maybe 6 years old. So he was
a little large to be carried by his mother, to be fair.
So that didn't really make sense. There's a few other things. We'll get into it more.
He had a chip. That was the whole point. The chip was probably a signifier that he was special.
I guess so.
No?
Some of the other things that I thought was funny, and it's one of these things that only makes sense in things like fairy tales. All the characters' names fit with the item that they transformed into. So Lumiere, Cogsworth is a clock. Mrs. Potts is a teapot. So it's very convenient that they did that.
Chip has a chip.
Yeah, some of the other things that bothered
me. The beast is a beast. Belle is beautiful.
To be fair, though, I mean, in the original fairy tale, none of these characters, aside from Beauty and the Beast, actually existed. Like, in the original fairy tale, they were just unseen servants. They were just invisible servants walking around the castle doing whatever they do. And it was just Beauty and the Beast living in the castle. So, I mean, it's Disney. They want to play some stuff up. They want to introduce some stuff other than just these two characters. So, I mean, it does kind of make sense, right?
I'm definitely with you there. The other thing is that I will go on record as saying right now is I don't generally enjoy musicals.
No.
However, when a bunch of magically enchanted inanimate objects break out into song, I'm down with it. Like at the beginning, when like all the townsfolk are like singing about Belle, that seems ridiculous to me. But like the Be Our Guest song, like that kind of makes sense. Like, dude, these plates and forks and knives have been living in this castle for 10 years with no other people here. Yeah, they might get a little loony, man. They might start singing. They might start floating around. Like, I bought it, and I didn't even as a child when I saw this movie, but as an adult, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. That kind of makes sense.
So one of the other things I kind of want to talk about were the big differences in how the relationship between Belle and Beast were. I think they were drastically different in the cartoon.
Way different.
So in this one, it was very Stockholmy, almost kind of, not rapey, I don't want to say rapey, but very Stockholmy.
The newer or later?
The animated one. So
yeah, both were, in my opinion.
I disagree. I mean, ultimately, yes, she was a prisoner at some point, but in the cartoon, she was resigned to take her licks, to take the punishment. She sits in the room crying until they let her out and have the Be My Guest number. She ultimately gets scared. She runs away. She comes back, and they ultimately fall in love. We'll get into the differences later.
Mean, as a woman, I'm going to say that they're both very similar.
I mean, yeah, ultimately she was a prisoner, but I think in the 2017 version, the live action, we'll get into more detail, she put up more of a fight. I felt like there was more of a reason that they fell in love. It wasn't just like, oh, this is a fairy tale, it has to happen. Specifically,
I mean, I felt like in the animated one, the Beast was way scarier.
Yes,
much more terrifying.
Yeah.
Like much more angry. looked way scarier.
He definitely
so,
looked scary with the bigger lip. His proportions were a little off.
I think that Belle just had more to overcome, right? This thing was physically intimidating, right? Yes. Like a massive beast. The voice was way scarier, and the temper of it was
I
really
agree
volatile.
The voice was scarier. I don't think I disagree with the temper, because up until the scene where with the wolves, almost all his dialogue and his voice, or at least the dialogue, was the same. He was just as angry as he was in the cartoon.
I guess it just didn't hit me. It didn't sell as well to me, I guess. When the beast is screaming through the door at her to come to dinner and stuff, I was way more scared in the animated one than in the live action one, where it was just oh shit.
I definitely have to agree
why
with
she's
Dustin.
not going to open that door, because there's a fucking mean beast out there that wants to kill her.
I absolutely agree with Dustin on this one. I think that in the 1991 animated version, the beast was actually scary, genuinely a terrifying bestial monster that is just horrifying. And that's something that at least I personally think was kind of missing from the newer version, because that seems, at least to me, coming at it from my perspective, I think that's something that's important given the storyline. It's something that she has to overcome, and it's also something that he, as the beast, has to overcome. He has this anger problem. He really should go to therapy for that anger problem, but he can't right now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Whereas in the newer one,
you and I have I think a pretty similar appreciation for the design of the character, right? And when you see that beast, that beast is a 10-foot tall boar, lion, goat monster. You know what I mean? It is way more physically intimidating, and the underbite with the fangs coming out, it can't even smile in a way that is pleasant. Yes. It's incapable at that point of love or kindness, and I think that that makes that scene echo a lot more. You're terrified, especially I'm a 35-year-old man watching this scene from what is probably supposed to be a 16-year-old girl behind a door with this fucking scary monster screaming at her, and I just bought it way more.
I kind of want to just name a few things that didn't make sense in this that the 2017 live action one kind of addresses. So one of the first things that kind of bothered me watching this was I had no sense of time in this movie. How many days passed? Was it weeks, months, any of that? So, and there are a few indicators in the cartoon. There's a point when Gaston goes to the asylum keeper and says, Maurice came here tonight and said this. So it seems like the timeline from Belle finding out that Maurice went missing, going to the castle, taking his place, having a couple music numbers, Maurice getting back into town, the "No One Fights Like Gaston" bump 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 song, interrupting and having it was all in one night. And then after that, how much time went by? There's no real indicator of how much time went by.
I feel like it wouldn't have even really taken that much time, because the beast goes from being the beast to being the only man apart from this woman's father to
show her
giving a damn about what she likes. She's all into the books and stuff, and he gives her the library. It is this would really be the first male figure in her life that's not her father to be oh, you're a person. Women are people. It's a very rapid and very sudden shift, I think, for Belle to realize that there are men that exist like this. This may be a beast, but it's very clearly a male beast. But it is a male beast that gives a fucking damn about her as an individual. Gaston, waits for her father to leave to go to her house to try to rape marry her in one day.
And has the wedding set up. The other thing was, so besides the timeline, and we already kind of touched on this, the spell was drastically different. It affected people not knowing at the castle, because presumably with the timeline that's set in the cartoon, this castle has to be within a couple of hours by horseback at most.
From
it
can't town. Be far.
So those are kind of
it's
the
less
main
than
things.
A day's ride.
Yeah, less than a day's ride. Those things, a few of the family elements, the spell stuff, those are all the things that I kind of didn't understand. And I think the 2017 live action movie actually made made a lot more of this stuff make sense. So I think at this point we should transition over to the live action one. Let's go through the same criteria, but then I kind of want to go over the differences specifically and what it did or didn't do better. And then we'll go in. So how does that sound, guys?
Yeah, I'm down. That's fine.
All right.
Wait,
Yeah, sure.
So now that we're going to talk about the 2017 version, I know we were talking about character design and just overall world design, and I know, Jen, you had something that you wanted to say about the Beast particularly.
Yeah, the original Beast was much more scary and, like intimidating. But the new Beast, the CG Beast, he's actually pretty hot. Like, I think that several people, like a lot of my friends and I agree that we definitely have sex with CG Beast.
Dude, I would too.
This might be a start for a whole new furry kind of.
No,
thing.
Yes, definitely.
Like maybe furry, dude. Like it's barely dancing on furry. Like this beast has horns that swoop back with his hair. Like he has a groomed beard.
Yeah,
like,
and he has his own castle. Like, I'm kind of like, hey, Beast, what's up? You know, you get your own castle.
True, he is a landowner.
Yeah, and he doesn't.
He could build equity. Think about it. His equity went up so much by the end of the movie. It had all those weird demon statues, but then at the end it was like angels. Like his property value went way up.
It really is a beautiful castle. Like the grounds are amazing.
Yeah, and like I would definitely marry him for that.
We can talk about Beast's property
reasonable.
value and all that stuff, but have you seen his cheekbones? Come on, you guys.
They're
sculpt.
He was actually, I think, better looking as the Beast than when he transformed into his weird British-looking self.
Way better.
He's got a gap tooth.
I kind of think so. Yeah, he had a better beard.
I would hit hair. Beast version, but human version, fuck that, man. Nah.
The Beast version is like that's a magical creature.
But he also
there's
looks
no
like
stigma there.
Yeah, he also looks like he has some humility.
It's like banging Sentai. That's okay.
No, also like Beast versions, like he seems like a person that you might want to actually get to know, whereas like human version of the Beast is like, you know what? He's probably really fucking full of himself.
Yeah.
Like
Also,
he'd definitely leave a lady out in the rain.
Yeah, like Beast version in this movie too was like way smarter. Like,
Yep.
Like when he was joking about the library, he was like, "Oh, well, did you read all these books?" Like, well, some of them are in Greek, which, he's pretty well read, dude.
Well,
like, she doesn't have to fucking teach him how to read, That
I liked about this one, and we'll get into it a little bit more when we talk about the relationship. But that aspect I liked a lot. So let's continue with the character, like just the design. I thought that the characters were really cool. I thought it was interesting in many regards that like Lumiere was more or less could walk around like a person. He had legs and everything like that. He could function like a miniaturized person.
Yeah.
And then other things were just brooms or they were just coat racks.
That was strange.
Yeah, man.
The other thing I didn't like about Lumiere was like his lower jaw was not like the candelabra or whatever. Like it was just it looked weird. It didn't look as good.
I agree.
Man, I got some thoughts. I got some thoughts on this shit, man. Like dude, my main problem is that it's completely inconsistent. Like from Lumiere to Cogsworth to Mrs. Potts, everything is fucking inconsistent. Yeah. Granted, they're really great designs. I especially like Cogsworth. I think his design is just gorgeous because it incorporates so many aspects of like actual functional clocks, but at the same time, like Lumiere doesn't actually look like a fucking candelabra. He just looks like a little dude.
He looks like a man with flames for hands and a head. Like
doesn't make any sense.
And I also didn't like with Mrs. Potts, like in the cartoon, the spout was her nose, and in this it was just like her face was animated onto the side.
Her spout.
I thought it was a little weird.
It came out of her side like all spouts do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I thought that was a little weird.
I thought that was kind of okay, but like, the main problem that I had was with Lumiere because like when we first see him as a candlestick, he just looks like a fucking candlestick. It's like this floral design. It's made of leaves and stuff. It's a bronze candlestick that looks kind of cool, but then suddenly he just like changes out of nowhere.
Well, I think that actually made sense in terms of the narrative because at the end he was also the last of the items. So of course, spoiler alert for this movie. But at the end, this one was a little bit different because the spell wasn't just, at the end of the 21st birthday when the last petal falls, you guys are stuck like this. You're going to be a candle for the rest of your life. It's, no, you become an inanimate object. You're going to be a candlestick, and you don't get to walk around, talk, anything anymore. So the stakes in this one were a lot higher. Lumiere was the person who was most gung-ho about building this relationship. He was the most human. So to me, I think it kind of made sense that he was able to hold on to a bit more of his humanity. He was also the last person to change because he had the most hope and he was the most lifelike person. So maybe that is why he was so much different than the others, that he could still walk around and be a little bit more anthropomorphic.
I don't know.
I get what you're saying. I just didn't like the character design. It wasn't as charming. It didn't like bring me into that world. Like when the animated candlestick is like approaching Belle and beginning the Be Our Guest song, it's like weird and like it really draws you in there because like I was still thinking like, dude, what if these candles burn out? Does he get to have the top half of his head? Can you just pop another one on there? Like, what's the deal with this little guy? And then in this one, it was like all of the human qualities were the metal or the bronze or whatever it was casted. And so it wasn't as like strange of a transformation. I thought that Cogsworth looked actually better in this one because he's a clock and there's nothing like consumable about it. But yeah, I thought that the Lumiere design, I think the animated one was much better.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
The other design that was weird was the wardrobe woman.
Oh man.
Oh yeah.
Because I felt like if she were in that room and transformed into a wardrobe, not only would she be a wardrobe, she could never leave that room.
Yeah.
Because she can't physically.
Well, that was
fit outside
actually
of it.
a big part of the story because her husband was the harpsichord. So
Yeah.
that was a big plot point throughout the movie, was
yeah.
that she couldn't really go and see him, and it was a big deal when she like forced her way out of that door and jumped over the balcony and crushed a couple people or whatever it was that she did.
Yeah, but I liked the like weird, like kind of like I guess I was wondering that more in the animated one, which is like, is this wardrobe woman living in this weird special hell because of this? Like, I think that the new one's ability to explain everything more was cool for like that nerdy part of you that wants that explanation, but it also kind of like paved over like all of those weird questions that you might have.
Yeah, it really like cut them off so you didn't have to think about them as characters too deeply.
So one of the other things I kind of wanted to touch on really quick, and then we'll go into the relationship part, were some of the things that this movie answered. So one of the things I really liked is that the live action actually poked fun at the cartoon a little bit. Like when Maurice was on his way to the castle and he gets lost and he takes that path that was revealed when the tree fell over. And he's like looking around, he's like, it's snowing in June. So kind of pointing out the weird climate from the first one. And then it turns out that the spell is what made this world a little bit different. I also liked that when they were singing the Gaston song at the end in the animated version, LeFou spells Gaston, but in this version he starts to spell it and he realizes, I'm illiterate, I don't know how to spell. And I thought that was funny. And it also goes into there was no bookstore in the live action version. It was the clergyman had a few books, and it makes sense if everyone's like, why does Belle read? Why would they have a bookstore? So there's a few things that actually made a lot more sense.
I think that's a really good point.
I guess I kind of thought that in the animated one with the bookstore, like it was more like, why is Belle in the bookstore? Like, why is a young woman in the bookstore?
Exactly. Yeah, I thought
was
it was
more
sexy.
like what it was trying to put out there, you know? And like Gaston, I think even in his part of the song comments on like nothing good can come from a woman reading or some weird misogynistic
he says a bunch of stuff like that, like
stuff.
What do they want?
It wasn't that like the
Thoughts?
town didn't read. It was just more like, how could a beautiful woman read and why would she want to?
Yeah, and he like throws her book in that mud puddle.
If you look at the historical context, in that time, most people were not reading. It does make more sense that it was a clergyman.
No.
So
But like also in that time, like a book would be super valuable, and like it's kind of unsettling when Gaston like chucks it in the mud and like she's cleaning it off and stuff. Like there just aren't that many books, let alone that many printers or people who can write or like whatever. Like it would have been almost like a priceless item in that time is kind of how I'm looking at it. Or at least very, very expensive. Like something that a farm girl could not afford. So when that dude gives it to her, it's like a huge deal.
No, I agree with Dustin. What Dustin said. I felt the same way.
Jenny, what were you saying about the hag earlier when we were in the cartoon version? What were you saying about the hag? You said it was like she might have been punishing him in advance or something like that?
Yeah, she cursed him. Like, she was just like, you're a piece of shit. She just like felt that she should curse him I mean, I know there's like a silly thing to curse him over for not letting her in, but like, I think maybe she was cursing him because she was like.
What I wanted to talk, I thought you said something about them like punishing him in advance, like it was like destiny. I kind of thought that was something interesting in this one. So they mentioned that Belle, being a free thinker who doesn't want to settle down with the man, will become a spinster like Agatha, and it turns out that Agatha was the hag and the enchantress who did this. So what I thought was interesting. You know, kind of maybe it might be a fan theory, I don't know. But what I thought was kind of interesting was she punishes him, but also is kind of helps Maurice, helps Belle out throughout the movie. So I almost feel like she set this whole chain of events up to give him a chance to redeem himself by allowing the tree to fall, by helping Maurice get back, helping all the different characters along. I think that she set this up.
Yeah.
To give
I would say
Beast
that
a chance to get better.
In this version, the hag has a much stronger role than just the cursor or the punisher, right? Like she makes like that like herb tea mixture or whatever to like cure the father, and even at the end of the movie, you know, when the beast is like stricken down, like the enchantress shows up to kind of raise him up, right? Like
she makes that decision that even though the spell ended, that she's going to help him out because he learned his lesson. Yeah,
like I felt like in the new version, the hag has a much more of a fleshed out role to play rather than just like this weird, cruel hobo woman.
Exactly, yeah. That's what I mean. Like that's why it's a circle between the beginning of the hag and the end of the hag of like why she did it, and it's more like I'm teaching you an important life lesson for your whole life.
And it would also make sense for this to even be through the hag's lens, like more about Belle, right? Like,
of course,
you know, like I mean, Belle's fate could end up being that of this hag woman if she doesn't marry or whatever. Like that's a very real consequence, like in that place in that time. But you know, like the hag, from like her knowledge of like herbology and magic and stuff, like probably started her life very similar to the way Belle did, right? Like she was probably thought of as peculiar, probably read a lot. Like
there you go.
You know, I think.
Ooh, so she sees herself in Belle.
It's possible. And they did mention that at the beginning she went from being a hag to this beautiful enchantress. So there is some parallels that she was very pretty when she was young. So I kind of want to segue into the relationship, the Belle-Beast relationship. I personally felt this was a much stronger relationship. So in the cartoon, after the whole wolf rescue scene, they kind of talk to the Beast like, you need to hit that and make her love you so we can get our life back.
Oh, man.
In this one, I felt that it was a lot less altruistic because most of the characters had a lot more to lose than they did in the cartoon. But what I liked about this is while she's nursing him back to health, she's like reading or saying something from Romeo and Juliet, and he kind of looks at her. He's like, that sucks. Like, I hate Romeo and Juliet. And she's like, well, what do you know about books? And he brings her into the library, and he's like, I've read most of this.
Yeah, crap. He's like, hey, dummy, I read just because I'm a beast.
So I like that a lot better because in the cartoon, they're like, you need to give her a gift. And then, so the only reason he gave her the library was specifically to trick her into loving him. In this, it was more organic, like, hey, I've got this. There was more banter. They actually had conversations.
I agree. I absolutely agree with what you're saying. The other thing that was weird about the animated one, and maybe I missed it, but I also don't know where the Beast would have found out that she even likes books, or that the library would be a good gift for her.
I think the Lumiere or Cogsworth said something to her. And the other thing that I liked was there was never a point where Belle was just, I'm going to take my punishment. When she tells her father, hey, I'm taking your spot, she's like, I'm going to escape. And immediately she starts taking all the scarves and fabric that the wardrobe spit at her and makes a rope and is trying to climb out. So she was never just that damsel in distress. So that's why I feel like this was a lot less Stockholm-y, that she made a choice to stay, and then organically they built that relationship. They started reading, they started sharing poetry with each other. Then they had that conversation in the garden where she was like, everybody in my town thinks I'm weird. And he's like, that town sounds terrible. You're great. So I felt like they really did develop feelings versus, hey, this is a cartoon and we just need to make them fall in love. So I felt this relationship was much better than the cartoon.
I think they spent just more time on it, you know? Like, I mean, like all of those conversations that we see in the live action one, like, you know, I mean, maybe they occurred like not in the animated one, like while she was a prisoner there or whatever. Like, I mean, it would still take a certain amount of sympathy and charisma to win over the Belle character, right? Like, but I did appreciate that they took the time to present that to us while we're watching it, to where it's like, oh dang, like, yeah, I get why she cares about this dude. Like, he's not some dumb idiot.
And they both were
that was actually
well educated and used to being outcasts, and that's what I like.
But have you guys seen Buffalo 66?
No, I've never heard of it.
No.
Oh, never mind. Sorry, but it's basically a new modern day Beauty and the Beast. Like, a guy kidnaps Christina Ricci and asks her to like meet his family.
Isn't that Black
and
Snake
pretend to
Moan?
be his girlfriend.
Yeah, it's just like that one time Christina Ricci got kidnapped by a guy.
Yeah. But yeah, it feels the same. It's like eventually Christina Ricci starts to feel for this person, even though he kidnapped her. It's the same. It's like, I like the original Beauty and the Beast is like way more fucked up than the second Beauty and the Beast, but this second Beauty and the Beast is still fucked up.
Yeah, both of them are still Stockholmy. You know, I agree with I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, just because we dressed it up a little bit better, like, this woman is still a prisoner.
Yeah.
I get where you're going. Like, yeah, and like, you know, you want to like it more. I did, and I did like it more. And I guess that's the ultimate trick is like, yeah, dude, you're totally right. Like, she's still a prisoner of the Beast. Like,
yeah, I had a really hard time watching it because of that fact. It's like I still couldn't get over that as a woman. You know, I was like, oh, I want to watch this.
And if she goes bad on him, she's dead. Like, she's just fucking dead.
Yeah, I still just couldn't get past it. I was like, this is still like really uncomfortable and weird for me to watch as a woman. And
although,
kind of a young woman,
Michael, I will agree with you that the redemption of the Beast when she looks in the mirror and sees her father in trouble, when the live action Beast says you should go to him, it is way more believable.
Yeah.
Like, it's way more like a gut react. Like, that's your family. You gotta help them.
Yeah,
like,
it didn't.
It's
like,
not
there
like
was no
I release
hesitation.
you. Like,
it was just.
It's not even. Yeah, there's no thought to it. It's just like, yeah, you have to go. Like, and there's no grandiose statement of like in the animated one, he says, "I release you. You're no longer my prisoner," or something like that. And in this one, he's just like, "You have to go. You have to go right now. Like, you can't
that's
stay
a little
here."
more like
That kind of makes it less Stockholmy, like less creepy, and more like, you're a person that I respect. You gotta do what you gotta do. Go deal with it.
The problem with that is that, like, it starts off as you're a prisoner, and then it turns into we are mutual with one another, and that's still a problematic because, like, you shouldn't start off any relationship as a person owning you or controlling you. I guess.
Well, that's
even
what
if
marriage
it turns
was
out
back
good.
then, though.
No, of course, absolutely. But back then, there was no such thing as a beast. Like, that didn't happen. Like, you know,
that's
like,
an excellent point. There were not beasts
back then. I mean, there's still people who have relationships like that. And yeah, I want to like, I'm just kind of like, you know, that's still not good.
All right. So, I just kind of want to talk about the one, I don't want to say elephant in the room, but this was kind of a big deal that they announced about a week or so before the movie came out. The Josh Gad's character being the first openly gay Disney character.
Yeah.
So, how did you guys like when they announced that? What I thought it was going to be
was not that gay.
Well, see, what I thought it was going to be is they were going to say, like, when they said openly gay, I didn't think they were going to be. I thought maybe he would have like a little soliloquy where he is like, "I like Gaston." Maybe at the end of that Gaston song, there would be like a little line like, "Nobody loves Gaston like me" or something like that.
Yeah.
He was a lot more open than I thought. Like his little like snide remarks to the girls, like, "It's never going to happen, ladies," and then him having a relationship. Well, not a relationship, but he was dancing with that other character at the end. That was a lot more progressive than I thought Disney was going to be. And let's be real, it's not that progressive, but a lot more
it's
progressive
not
than I thought Disney was going to be.
Like, I guess the way I looked at it was like, dude, he wasn't that much more gay than the animated one. Like, like if any dude has another dude following him around, telling him how great he is all the time and singing songs about him and massaging him, like, yeah, dude's probably gay for you, man. Like, it's probably kind of a gay.
I was thinking,
the
like,
Star Wars
Smithers
prequels
Burns,
got made.
you know?
That one producer was a yes man following George Lucas around. There's a precedent for that.
Of course, but
dude's probably kind of gay for you, man. And also, I felt like Gaston, like, you know, his ego is so fragile that, like, oh yeah, I need compliments, like, no matter what. Like,
well, that's the thing that I
course I
want
want this.
Funny about that song is he's kind of depressed at the beginning, and then he literally has the entire town singing his praises. And he's also beating the shit out of them while it's happening.
Than the other dude? Like, I mean, it brings that question to mind. Like, dude, like, you know, oh, I need a compliment. I need people to think I'm beautiful. I need all of this. And it's like, he's just kind of fragile, and he also doesn't love women. Like, he treats them terribly. Like, it's kind of like
it's
that weird.
If he's gay or not.
Yeah, like it's kind of like that weird. Like, oh, I'm gonna make up for my homosexuality by being uber manly.
Of course, that's how I felt about him.
One of the things that I really liked at the end, and we kind of touched on at the beginning, the spell made everyone forget that that castle was there. I really liked at the end that all the townspeople had a loved one that just they forgot about for 10 years.
Yeah, that cleaned up.
I thought the ending was really great. There were a lot of things I liked about this movie.
The one thing I want to jump back to a little bit, I know it's a little bit disjointed, but I want to know what Xavier, like we were talking about the design of the previous movie, like how did you feel about like not only the beast but just like the overall like the town, the castle?
Oh my god. Okay, so I mean I know this is jumping back a little bit, but I personally feel like the beast in the new movie was not as, it just didn't sell me as much on the idea of him being a beast as I would have liked, because like, I mean,
absolutely,
you know, look at his face. He's a handsome fucking man, even when he is a beast. His cheekbones could just fucking cut through diamonds.
All right. So we've already talked about how handsome the beast is. So.
But like the production design,
talk about it enough.
No, seriously, we cannot. But like the production design in general, the design of the castle, the interiors, the like the blending between the actual practical sets and the CG sets. I mean, the entire thing is just gorgeous, and
it was pretty. Like I think
pretty.
A bit was missed with like the Belle's father being an inventor, and the animated version having like that weird wood chopper contraption.
Yeah.
You know, and like there was a lot of room for like more weird, funky, like steampunky kind of.
I definitely agree with that.
Talking about inventing, I do want to give a little bit more. So we've already kind of talked about how Belle's a stronger character in this version than the animated version, but she was just as smart as her father, helping him, telling him what he needed before, and she invented a washing machine.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty cool.
Oh, no, totally. I almost think it would have been cool if they'd had her, like, invent something that would have facilitated her escape. Like if she'd been, like, hoarding items throughout the castle.
That was actually
or, like, put,
something
like,
that I had been wishing that she would have done throughout the course of the movie, is, like, she already showed earlier in the movie that she was capable of inventing stuff, that she knew all the tools that her father used, so why didn't she do something else? Do some callbacks.
No, and you could have broken ground by making some kind of woman genius,
right? Well, yeah, it's Disney.
But
like,
I think
there's never been a genius ever before.
But I think the thing that
Madam Curie.
I think the thing that bothers me the most is that even though the design for the Beast was like this, I mean, honestly, he's just a handsome furry dude. At least to me personally, he wasn't actually bestial enough.
What were your impressions of this movie? Even now, I'm not sure how I feel of whether or not this movie is necessary. While it was gorgeous, and I do like the added elements, them poking fun at the cartoon, fixing the timeline, making the spell make more sense, making the literacy jokes, stuff like that. I liked it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad that we got this movie. I really enjoyed watching it. I watched the cartoon and this one in the same day, just a couple hours apart, and I really enjoyed it. And I didn't feel like I wasted time. Like, I didn't feel like it was redundant watching it. So I think it was a great movie. I really enjoyed it. I think I'm glad we got it, but I could have lived without it as well.
Yeah.
I think, and this is very important because I said it on the last episode, that if I had gotten Alison Brie as Belle, I would have been much happier.
Yeah.
I think that watching the original one, that character looks like Alison Brie. When she talks, she sounds like Alison Brie. And, like, maybe she's, like, you know, for Hollywood, whatever, a little bit too old to be Belle. But, like, I would have been sold. Like, 100% for Alison Brie.
Right. I don't think she's too old. Wait, can I say my opinion on
Please do.
Okay, thank you. So I gotta say that the first movie was garbage and terrible for women. And then the second movie improved that first movie and is still garbage and terrible.
But that's progress.
Yeah, that's progress. But I gotta say that if I had a child, I wouldn't show either of these movies.
Ooh.
Truth bomb.
Truth bomb, I'm serious.
I do not entirely disagree with that.
All right.
Thank you. You can do that.
This week, the news and listener mail kind of segment's going to be one and the same. I got a bunch of emails and Instagram comments and comments on the website asking if we were going to do an episode about Beauty and the Beast. That was almost 100% of our emails.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are going to do that.
To all the people who asked, yes. I did get one email from David Romero who asked us about they announced that there's going to be a Matrix something coming out. Initially, it was announced as a reboot or a remake. So this is what David R. said. If and when The Matrix gets rebooted, would it be better to cast a new actor as Neo or cast a whole new character as the lead? So me personally, I love The Matrix. I think I saw it on my 10th or 11th birthday, and it was one of my favorite movies. It was like my first favorite movie that was not a kid's movie. So I loved The Matrix. I was really excited for the sequels, but I hated the second and the third one. So me personally, I'm completely cool with them rebooting it, remaking it, even having a Neo character, because I think the first movie set up such a really interesting world, and the second two movies just shit on it. So I'm cool if they go back and start from scratch.
If you redo The Matrix, there's room in that universe for a different character than Neo.
Yes.
Like there's the whole concept of the movie is, humanity's trying to break free or whatever. And like I admittedly watched the Animatrix, where they kind of touch on like other people that wake up from the Matrix and kind of what happens to them. So I think I would find it more refreshing to have a new lead,
like a side
not Neo. Yeah. Well, just kind of like a different character that is able to awaken and see the world for what it is, and run through that movie. Like I already saw what Neo did. I don't need to do that again.
So Zach Penn, the person who's been put in charge of writing whatever this project is going to be, he said if he had to recast Keanu Reeves, he would just cast Keanu Reeves, which makes sense. Let's be real. He looks almost
Dude looks the same. He looks amazing,
does.
dude. The guy's a vampire. He does not age.
Also, I would just cast Keanu Reeves in everything because I love him.
Like I said, I'm fine with whatever happens to the Matrix trilogy. Like you said, anything really can make sense. It could be Neo reborn, reskinned. It could be the same guy who just looks different. They could do anything with it. It could be a sequel, prequel,
you could also have a new character encounter Neo as played by Keanu Reeves and have him be just another character.
Like it could be like the video games, like the Enter the Matrix, where you played as like Jada Pinkett Smith and the Asian guy. I can't remember what that character's name was.
I try my best not to play video games based on movies.
Those games are actually really good. So that's really the only news I had. The only other one that was kind of interesting this week was they announced that they're going to remake The Fly again. I don't know who's directing it. I don't know anything. I haven't seen anything else for it. But the Cronenberg classic is getting redone, and then it was. Which in itself was a remake, so...
Damn, we should do The Fly.
We totally should.
Oh my god.
God, I love the Cronenberg Fly, the Goldblum Fly, the Brundle Fly. Oh my god. So gross.
Yeah, real gross. I've only seen the Jeff Goldblum one, and it's been a long time.
But that one is just so gnarly.
It is.
Ugh, how are you going to top that? How are you going to... Ew, I don't even know how you get more gruesome than it. Barfing on the donuts? Oh, fuck. It's just gross.
All right, so I think that's episode 3. Jen, tell us where we can find you. Go ahead and plug yourself.
Hopefully you guys live in Oakland, California, and you want to come to my show that I produce called Cat People every third Saturday at the Layover.
Sounds awesome.
What else you got? You got Instagram? You got Twitter?
Oh, yeah. So I do have Instagram and I do have Twitter. I have all those things. You can find me at Jen, JENNDRON, on every fucking platform.
Awesome. So... Go ahead, check her out. You could also just Google her. She's got some of her little stand-up things that have popped up on YouTube.
Hey, you got to get her permission first before you Google her.
Yeah, be careful. Consent.
Do you give permission to our listeners to Google you?
Yeah, go ahead and Google me, actually.
Excellent. Yeah, she's got some pretty funny videos on YouTube about getting a cat. For us, you can, of course, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at MDXpods. You can also check us out on our website at MDXpods.com. And please check out patreon.com/MDXpods. If you can spare, a few cents, help us out. We definitely want to get some new microphones. We want to get some microphone stands so we're not craning our necks, and that would help us out a lot. and just make the audio
Yeah, I
quality
mean,
better
dude,
for you guys.
we're making this podcast on tube computers.
Yeah.
And the computer I'm using right now is actually the size of my living room. It's similar to one of the first space computers.
Also, we're using tin cans and string.
Yeah, we got a really long string going from LA to San Francisco.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, Jenny and I are literally sharing earpods of like iPhone earpods right now. So give us some money. Give us all your money.
All the
Help us
money.
out.
So much money. All like 2 cents every month.
Also, we are now even easier than ever to listen to. We are on iTunes. We are on Stitcher Radio. Apparently on Google Play. I got confirmation from Google that I'm on there, but I cannot find us. I've had a couple people tell me that they found us. But if you use Google Play, we're on there somewhere.
You
So,
clearly need
People,
to learn how to use that
please.
platform.
Find us
and,
on Google
please,
Play. We are missing on Google Play.
Oh, Jesus.
Find
Oh,
us,
God.
please.
And please make sure you subscribe and download and listen. Please tell your friends, write reviews. And that'll help us out a lot and get us. So if you can't afford to, spare $1 or $2 on Patreon, just subscribe and rate us on any of those platforms, and it'll help us out a lot. That's
Also
it.
send
Episode 3.
compliments.
Thank you for listening. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.